this is the toughest training camp for the guys.
Yeah, I mean, that's what today is. It's a training camp for the playoffs. Everyone goes back to square one. You got to reestablish the habits and the things that you build throughout the year. At the same time, don't take them for granted. So I thought the guys did a great job, the physical and a mental approach to a day like today. And today's like the first day of a long journey, however long that may be. So I thought we came in with the right mindset.
Given that you guys could get four different teams round one, how do you go about preparing for each of them and many different outcomes there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's as simple as regardless of who you're playing, the playoffs is no different than the regular season. It comes down to the margins, the style and the system in which we play. That's really what it is. So between now and Friday, we'll hammer home us getting better as a team and how we can continue to work the margins on both ends of the floor. And understand the playoffs, there's obviously more attention on it, but winning a basketball game comes down to all the same things. So we just have to have an innate discipline on the details and the margins.
You mentioned a couple of times studying the ways different teams have gotten to championships and gotten it done. And what have you just kind of learned through that process, looking at the different ways, different things that can come up, and just sort of like how it's not always the same?
Yeah, I mean, I think having the expectation that a series is going to go a certain way. I mean, there's been teams that have gone down. There's been teams that have only lost a couple of games. At the end of the day, like, you just can't have an expectation that's going to go a certain way. It takes what it takes. And the other team's trying to win a championship too. So you have to have a respect for your opponent. You have to have a mental toughness to withstand things. There's a lot of things that go on within a series. So I think the most important thing is maintaining a mental toughness, maintaining a discipline towards what we do, and then get rid of any expectation of how we think a series is going to go and just be ready to play.
Joe, what do you think of the play-in tournament in general, that the NBA has this and you don't know your opponent right now and you guys are sort of there waiting?
I don't really care. I mean, get ready for Sunday.
Doesn't matter who it is.
No.
Joe, collectively as a team or even you as a coach, how different this year is the approach or maybe the comfort level than it was 1 year ago?
I mean, it should be different every year if you take and learn from your experiences. So this doesn't need to be about last year to this year. At the end of the day, every year you should pick from your experiences. We've had a time over the season to develop a shared approach towards how we want to go about doing things. And every day we come in and continue to do that. So the only difference is time. I've had time to iron out the system, iron out a shared mental approach towards winning, what that looks like, and working at it every single day. So that's the biggest difference has been time and the ability to just hone in on your craft.
Joe, Brad upstairs he spoke to us earlier. He was commending your ability to get a team on message and keep them on message throughout a season. What's your approach to making that happen with a team year in and year out?
I think you got to build an environment to where there's ownership. So I think the players take full ownership of the environment, take full ownership of the building, and then there's just open, honest communication with accountability. And that can't happen unless you have a bunch of guys that are open-minded and wanting to be coached. So I think it starts with them, and their ability to communicate with each other is super important. And you just work to kind of fill in the blanks from time to time. But it's mostly how they carry out each and every day with each other.
Does the message change much from you postseason?
If anything, no, because to me there's no difference between winning in the regular season and winning in the postseason. It comes down to the margins. It comes down to shot selection, turnovers, offensive rebounds, execution, and who's the tougher team, and then who can withstand the ebbs and flows of the series. It's very important that we understand that the process towards winning doesn't change. You just have to do it if you do it under higher intensity and stress, and that's when it's harder to do the details. Is when you amp up the stress, you amp up all that stuff, the physicality, the details become harder and harder. So that's kind of what we're focusing on.
What's the biggest lesson you took from your first playoff run when you look back on that?
What takes to win a playoff game is what takes to win a regular season game. And you're not going to have an expectation of how it's going to go. And that's the most important thing, is you got to work those. So very similar to the regular season. I mean, we've done pretty much every adjustment possible. In the playoffs, obviously the timing of that adjustment is a little bit different depending upon the series and where you're at. But it comes down to the same thing. It's just, can you do the most important details at the highest level of stress and physicality?
Question for Joe?
Joe, Blake Griffin announced his retirement today. What did you enjoy most about coaching him last season and the time you spent with him?
Best Blake story, I think, is when we first signed him, I was like, first time head coach, I'm going to coach a former #1 pick, see how this goes. And I really I didn't know him that well. And I really grew to have a love and respect for him when we decided to kind of go away from him. And he came in and pulled me to the side. He was like, hey, what can I do to get back? What can I do to get better? And for a guy of his stature and his resume, of his success and his longevity as a career, to come to a first-time coach and ask that, just said a lot about who he was. And I think from that point on, he kind of took control of the temperature of the locker room. And, so that was a moment I'll never forget. And really grateful that I got to be around him.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.